Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is going to be another my thoughts on video, and today I wanted to do sort of a look back. It's Christmas Eve on the day this video comes out, and whilst I'll be doing a look forward on New Year's Eve for 2019, I think that for now I want to look back at 2018 for the hobby as a whole. I'll be talking about the channel and everything else in another video, but today I wanted to do my thoughts on the hobby in 2018, because 2018 has been a crazy year for this hobby, has it not? We started off back in December 2017 with the Malign Portents release for Age of Sigmar, and then going into January we had Nurgle, which came out for both game systems, Maggotkin, and then we also saw the Chaos Demons Codex. We had the Legions of Nagash came along, the Adeptus Custodes, we had the Daughters of Cain. Then there was Adepticon, the Adna Deepkin came out, the Adeptus Sororitas were revealed for the first time, or previewed for the first time. And many more things happened just in those early months. I can't list off everything that's happened just in those first 3 to 4 months. And then of course in summer we had AOS 2, probably the biggest event of the year for most things hobby related. Was the 2nd edition of Age of Sigmar. 40k got its 8th edition in 2017, AOS got its 2nd edition in 2018. That was a huge deal, a lot changed there. I made a lot of videos about it, and a lot of things were introduced. A lot of people got into Age of Sigmar. My gaming group particularly, we had a lot of fun with AOS when it got its new edition. And then there was even more. The reveals just never stopped coming. We got more new codices. The Tau got a codex, I think, in April, give or take. There's been the Beastmen, the Nighthaunt, and Stormcast have all come out for Age of Sigmar, or Beast of Chaos, I should be more specific, for Age of Sigmar. We've had the Orcs for Warhammer 40,000. We had Orktober. And on the specialist side, Blackstone Fortress have come out quite recently. Warhammer Underworlds has received its 2nd edition in the form of Night Vault. We've had Adeptus Titanicus. Had a huge amount of expansion for Necromunda. Blood Bowl has seen plenty going on with, I think, 3 or 4 new teams added in. There's been so much going on. It's been a really crazy year for the hobby. And I think it's really good. If you sort of want a TLDR, I think the hobby's had a really good year. But why is that? Because quantity of releases is all well and lovely. It's all great to see, okay, here's something, here's something, here's something. Everybody gets catered to within a not stupid period of time. If you play 40k, then you had 6, 7 codices come out this year, if not more. I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of 4, and that's without even taking half a second to think. There's probably plenty more that I've missed. We know Genestealer Cult are just around the corner. We've had box games for many a faction. So the Genestealer Cult's got some stuff in there. The Eldari have got something. The Orcs got something. Kill Team happened as well. So there's now cheaper value box sets that give you some terrain for Kill Team, which is a fantastic expansion. And I'm really glad we've got Kill Team as a specialist game. 40k has had a heck of a lot going on with it. And then on the lore side of 40k, sure, we haven't had the same sort of dramatic impact as the return of Magnus, Guilliman, and Mortarion like we had in 2017. It's sure not that scale, but there's been a heck of a lot of stuff happen. Most notably is the recently released Vigilus Defiant. Now, I don't know everything that happens in that book, but from what I can gather, that seems to be sort of a setup book, a prequel, a book 1 of a series, and we'll see what happens in maybe when those 80 days are up and we get another expansion on that. But that gives us a lot of information. The upgrading of Astartes to Primaris, I'm hoping, is in there, and plenty more. On the gaming side, as well as the new armies, we've had several balance changes. Chapter Approved has brought a huge amount of points changes to almost every faction in the game, and there's been the 2 big FAQs. So we had the suit nerf, the psychic focus nerf, we had the changes to, goodness me, there are so many changes that went through those tests just to balance them out. The command point nerf and the CP farming problem, that got nerfed. Reserves got changed twice. So it's been a big set of changes for 40k, tabletop-wise, lore-wise in some ways, and models have generally been excellent when they've come along. They've not been as common for 40k because most armies are just receiving codices for the 8th edition, but when they have come along, they have generally been excellent. The Gene Stealer cults we've seen previewed look brilliant. The Orcs are fantastic models. I love the new Orc models. And I'm sure there's plenty more that I can't think of off the top of my head that are looking excellent as well. On Age of Sigmar, they've had plenty going on, and generally it's all been for the better. The lore got a real boost this year for Age of Sigmar. Between Malign Portents and the stories that came along all through the run-up to AOS 2 in June, we had the stories were brilliant. Legions of Nagash helped flesh out death hugely. The Maggotkin of Nurgle gave some more context to chaos. The Daughters of Cain and the Idened Deepkin, I've got both of those books, and they were fantastic for fleshing out Elven society and the Elven pantheon, something that we haven't seen before in Age of Sigmar. Then after AOS 2 came out, the new rulebook gave us a huge amount of information about most of the realm, all of the realms, although some got more love than others. All of the factions got a little bit of information, and then the rules changed as well, but I'll get to that. The Stormcast got a load of love in their new battle time, giving them a bunch of extra context and introducing the Sacrosanct Chamber. Nighthorn added more to death. Beasts of Chaos helped to integrate a few factions, and when the Moon Clan come along, because they're pretty much going to be straight up in the new year, they'll add something to Destruction that has been sorely, sorely lacking. Of course, with Wrath and Rapture, that's applied to both game systems, and that's added in new models and lore and gaming stuff there. But AOS, of course, got the biggest gaming change, its 2nd edition. There were sweeping changes that went through AOS 2. The introduction of command points, but completely different to 40k. The removal of reinforcement points for summoning. There was a rework to so many systems. AOS 2 got a lot of stuff added to it, particularly revolving around heroes, so endless spells were introduced, even if they didn't particularly take off right away. There was the change to unit coherency and the destruction that that can cause. I know that's not a big deal to everybody, but that's something that I can recall. And then we've got the Realmscape rules, the Realm Relics, the Malign Sorcery added in more stuff for the realms, like Realm Magics. There's been so much added through AOS 2, and I'm just, like I say, this is all the top of my head from what I can remember, and it really shook AOS up. Admittedly, it's interesting that AOS has not needed a big FAQ. AOS has had a big FAQ, though it seemed to come across more as an errata and a quick FAQ rather than a proper balance pass. Obviously, they're quite happy with the state of Age of Sigmar, and so am I. Whilst admittedly, I don't like the fact that the army I collect is one of the most powerful in the game because I don't like playing meta lists. It's really good to see that there's a nice variety. Some armies can still get into the top ranks of tournaments, even if they've not got battle tones or if they've got old battle tones. A lot of armies can still hang. The General's Handbook has done wonders and the alliance systems are working well. It's just in a really healthy place. Age of Sigmar is in a fantastic space right now, and is in a perfect space for people to go and try it. I've harped on this all year. This is the time to look at Age of Sigmar. Its lore has been revitalised, and you've got plenty to read. There's huge amounts of different armies and models available, and more is coming as we know. And the rules are so healthy that the competitive scene has not felt fit to complain enough to get them patched. That says a lot, that how quality the rules are right now, that the game is in a healthy state and did not need sweeping patches like 40k has done on 3 separate occasions. 2 sets of balance changes and then the points changes in chapter approved, which is pretty good. It's not, obviously it's only been 6 months since AOS 2 came out, but still, it's pretty good. Now you could argue, and this is something you could probably argue very fairly, that we got too much this year. You could argue that Games Workshop's current release schedule is too fast. You can't keep up. I mean, it used to be, you would say, okay, in this month's White Dwarf, here is the focus on the one thing we're doing. That'll be an extra bit for Forge World, some stuff from Black Library, but here is the core release of this month. Now, most release windows go over about a fortnight, and then you're on to something new. Whether that's a specialist game, whether that's a reveals weekender, whatever it is, the release schedule has gotten a lot faster. And that's great because we get more models, we get more lore, we get new changes to the rules that keep the game feeling fresh. It is problematic for those of us who are on tight budgets, or for those of us who don't keep up that closely. I'm lucky as a YouTuber that I keep up with everything as closely as I do, because if I didn't do this, and I didn't do YouTube and have to do, oh, not have to do, but I wanted to do reviews and I did the podcast, that allows me to keep up. Those of us who can't devote that time probably feel very flummoxed, like, whoa, what happened? And trying to keep track of what's come out when is quite difficult. So, do you remember when this faction got this thing here? No, probably not, because it got swept under the carpet behind something else. Because it was just 1 week, flash in the pan, move on, next thing. Which is not ideal, but I think they've got the balance just about right. The release schedule is fast, which is good, because it means that we always have something to talk about, the games are always evolving, the lore's always changing, and the models continue to come out looking fantastic. And the speed has not cost, generally, rule or model quality. Sure, they've needed to do sweeping changes to 40k, but they haven't for AOS. And there's not been a bunch of models that have come out and people just said, ooh, that could have done with another 2 weeks on the drawing board. All the models that are coming out still look brilliant, as a rule of thumb. And the writers are doing a fantastic job as well, with both AOS and 40k's lore being in an interesting spot. You might not like the new setting for 40k, where it's M42, Gilliman's back, you've got the Primaris, but it is objectively well written. Whether you like what it talks about is different, but it is objectively well written for the most part. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's generally pretty good. And then you step away from the two core games, and you look at Middle-earth. Middle-earth came back with a vengeance in the later half of this year. I'm not going to say it's anywhere near 40k and AOS, because it's not. But Middle-earth is back, and people are presumably playing it, and they're pushing it. It's something that people are interested in again. And that's something that I don't think we could say for a long time. Lord of the Rings, War of the Ring, The Hobbit, I don't think those games quite captured audiences. And while I don't think the Middle-earth game is ever going to get near its Warhammer rivals, it's certainly given enough of a push to get people to at least consider it again. And then you have the specialist games. Oh my days, the specialist games have had a very good year. Blood Bowl has received 3-4 teams by the end of this year, as well as its almanac updating the rules, and all of those teams do come with updates as well. Warhammer Underworlds, that received Nightvault, its second edition, for want of a better phrase. Shadespire was replaced by Nightvault. They've introduced 5 teams that I can think of since Nightvault. So Stormcast, Sacrosanct, Nighthaunt, Tzeentch, Moonclan, and there's been a Dark Oath team revealed as well. There's also the Troggoth team that's going to come along. When that's out, I'm not sure. So that's 6 teams added to Underworlds. And the game got revamped by adding magic into it. And while I can't talk about how well it plays because I haven't played it, it is obviously popular to the point that they're giving that beta rules and tests and allowing that to become the ultimate competitive miniatures game. It is a hardcore competitive game for people who like that sort of play. Kill Team, I mentioned it earlier, new expansion for 40k, gave us a new way to play the game, which is always lovely to have, the skirmish gameplay that 40k doesn't always do all that well, and I think they've generally implemented it well. Most factions have got something, all factions have at least got something to use, and the new terrain being integrated into the box sets is very, very helpful. They've since added the Commanders expansion, which allows you to put heroes in there, which is also kind of nice. Then you've got Necromunda. Necromunda has received, I think, 3 gangs this year. I'm trying to remember when Necromunda came out. It's been that busy, I can't even remember when Necromunda came out. But it's received Delac most recently. Vansar have come along. There's Orlok, Escher, and Goliath, of course. So we've now got 5 gangs in there, and I'm sure that House Spira, the Muties, and all of that will be along in due course. We got the Speed Freaks box game. Some would say that's kind of a bit of a Gorkamorkery Wacky Races vibe. I don't know how many people played it for the game itself as opposed to just getting the buggies and bikes on the cheap, but it's another game we can play. Adeptus Titanicus. This one came with a lot of hype. Being able to play Epic, again, although it's a slightly grander scale than Epic, pitting Titans against Titans and thrashing it out and having a lot of fun in a very complex game system. That's been very, very popular too, as far as I'm aware. It's probably not sold out completely, but it's been popular, and I believe its Grandmaster Edition did sell out on launch. And what's the other one that I was just had it in my head and I've lost it again? Yeah. Oh, Warhammer Quest, of course. Blackstone Fortress came out very, very recently, and that introduced a host of interesting lore, such as the return of the Men of Iron, of all things. It's got an accompanying novel, which we talked about in a previous episode of Adeptus Podcastus, and I think that's a very interesting development as well, and it's good to see that Warhammer Quest is not dead, because Silver Tower had a run, and now Blackstone Fortress is getting a run, and that's all great. I should temper it, and I realise that for most of the last 15 minutes I have been overwhelmingly positive. But that's because, as a year, I think it has been overwhelmingly positive for the hobby. I genuinely believe that this year has been one of the best. Whether you think it compares to 2017 is up to you, because obviously 2017 was a grand old year for 40k, with Primarchs returning, 8th edition came out and that shook the game up massively. But arguably this year has seen development for 40k in the form of its beta rules and its big FAQs, as well as the return of factions. And were there any new ones? I don't believe there are any new ones yet. The Sister Battle will probably be the nearest thing to a new faction. And obviously they've added new rules for chapter approved as well. But this year has been about Age of Sigmar in particular. And this year the lore has taken the wheel somewhat in terms of what we've learned from the Tau Codex and pushing their lore forward, from Vigilus Defiant pushing the main plot forward as well as Plague War, and then Age of Sigmar, of course, I've already mentioned, had a fantastic year with its lore pushing the game forward in that sense. So I do think it's been an excellent 2018. Has it been perfect? No. Some of the things that have been released I disagree with. I don't think that we should have had the factions we've had for AOS. I think we should have had a Destruction faction both before AOS 2 and after it. I think the Moon Clan are overdue, very much so. I think we could have waited for the Idoneth to come out at the end of the year, perhaps, and move the Moon Clan to back in May, because that would have given Destruction something just before the new edition that had been written for the new edition, and give Destruction something to play. I personally think that the October business, whilst I loved what happened in October with the releases, I feel like October got played out a little too long, and the hype for it died quite early on. As much as it was interesting to see it, it took too long, and it sort of petered out because it got lost in the shuffle behind all the other releases that were going on in early October, to the point that the Orc Codex didn't come out until November. Some armies presumably got smacked around with a balance bat. I know the Grey Knights didn't have a very good year, and I can probably ask anyone in the comments to tell me, oh, the factions that had a bad year in 40k particularly, though AOS could also argue maybe didn't get everything it was supposed to get. So not all the releases were to my liking. Not all the lore is picture perfect. Of course it isn't. It's subjective after all. Some of the things you read are just like, what? You do scratch your head a little bit. But generally, I think 2018 has been an excellent year. As for next year, well, that's going to be a separate video that I will put out on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, where I will talk about my hopes and my thoughts on what we should get in the hobby in 2019, because I think that's probably as much of an interesting discussion as anything else. So there you go. That is my thoughts on the hobby in 2018. It's been an overwhelmingly positive year. Loads of excellent releases, fantastic new lore and models, good updates to the rules, to the point that AOS is in a really healthy state and 40k is continually improving, if you believe that it is improving. Fantastic addition to specialist games, though admittedly I'd like to see Battlefleet Gothic, please, and I'd quite like to see some more stuff like the Necromunda that got me interested, and could have Xenos in Adeptus Titanicus, and various other little minor details that I have to talk about. But generally, specialist games have had a great year. Black Library's had a great year. I didn't even talk about what Black Library's done this year very much, but we now know Siege of Terror is coming next year. That set the stage for the ending of the Horus Heresy. That's going to be amazing. The Primarchs novels have been a bit hit and miss, but generally been well received. It's just been a fantastic year for the hobby, and I hope we get more like it. But that is just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Has it been a good year? Has it been a bad year? Tell me why. We'll have a discussion. I always like to see what you have to say. For now, though, thank you for watching. Tactica Imperialis has been my thoughts on the hobby in 2018. I'll see you all again. Bye for now.